You're watching Truth Talk News.
Things are happening so quickly and advancing so far and fast into this, in every avenue, the deindustrialization of our nation financially, the moral decay, the mind control, the big pharma grasp, the control, like Aldous Huxley explains. It's just so horrific that the world is becoming just as these elitists have planned. Here is Aldous Huxley in 1962.
These methods, I think, are a real refinement on the older methods of terror, because they combine methods of terror with methods of acceptance. But then there are various other methods which one can think of. There is, for example, the pharmacological method. This was one of the things I talked about in Brave New World. And the result would be that, I mean, you can imagine a euphoric which would make people thoroughly happy even in the most abominable circumstances. I mean, these things are possible.
I want to congratulate you and the rest of the media on getting Obama elected.
If your point is that perhaps Barack Obama is in for a new world order, I think you are correct.
Mr. Huxley has recently returned from a conference where the discussion focused on the development of new techniques by which to control and direct human behavior through the application of physical coercion, through the appeal of ideologies, through the manipulation of man's physical and social environment, and more recently through the cruder techniques of psychological conditioning.
All revolutions have essentially aimed at changing the environment in order to change the individual.
If somebody wants to build a coal-fired plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them because they're going to be charged a huge sum for all that greenhouse gas that's being emitted.
Sooner or later, you have to bring in an element of persuasion, an element of getting people to consent to what is happening to them. We are in process of developing a whole series of techniques which will enable the controlling oligarchy to get people actually to love their servitude.
To all the young people who are here, I want you to know what I'm going to be asking for. I'm going to be asking for all of you to serve this country.
To love their servitude.
Serve in the military.
People can be made to enjoy a state of affairs which they ought not to enjoy.
Serve in the Peace Corps. Serve in the homeless shelter.
The enjoyment of servitude.
Serve in some capacity for your community.
And that there seems to be a general movement in the direction of this kind of ultimate revolution, this method of control by which people can be made to enjoy a state of affairs which, by any decent standard, they ought not to enjoy. This, I mean, the enjoyment of servitude.
You have to, in a sense, it's required of everybody, 18 to 25, 3 months. Because I think anytime somebody serves their country in some capacity, we're going to be stronger for it.
The scientific dictatorships of the future, and I think there are going to be scientific dictatorships in many parts of the world, that if you can get people to consent to the state of affairs in which they are living, the state of servitude.
And Barack Obama will require you to work.
If you can do this, you are likely to have a much more stable, a much more lasting society, a much more easily controllable society than you would if you were relying wholly on clubs and firing squads and concentration camps.
The Obama transition team is trying to figure out how to harness this support. Some think there is potential to convert political support into social activism, part of an army waiting for new orders.
In the recent history of brainwashing, we see that the Pavlovian methods have been applied systematically.
I think it's going to bring in an era where the president's connected with an army to do his bidding.
A very large army of totally devoted people has been created.
But the question now is, what to do with this young, eager, energetic army?
We cannot continue to rely only on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well funded.
Well, then we come to the consideration of other techniques for inducing consent.
A light will shine down. You will experience an epiphany.
First of all, there are the methods connected with straight suggestion and hypnosis.
You will say to yourself, I have to vote for Barack.
Human populations can be categorized according to their suggestibility. This is a matter of enormous political importance. For example, any demagogue who is able to get hold of a large number of these 20% and to organize them is really in a position to overthrow any government in any country.
Part of an army waiting for new orders.
What's required is a new Declaration of Independence, not just in our nation, but in our own lives. Independence from ideology and small thinking. Independence from ideology and small thinking.
There is a real difference between ourselves and, say, the inquisitors of the 16th century. We know much more precisely what we are doing. I mean, what might happen if these fantastically powerful techniques were used by unscrupulous people in authority?
Contrary to the rumors that you've heard, I was not born in a manger.
What sort of society would we get?
Suppose, Lord Russell, this film were to be looked at by our descendants, like a Dead Sea Scroll in 1,000 years' time. What would you think it's worth telling them? One last question. Suppose, Lord Russell, this film were to be looked at by our descendants, like a Dead Sea Scroll in 1,000 years' time. What would you think it's worth telling that generation about the life you've lived and the lessons you've learned from it?
I should like to say two things. One intellectual and one moral. The intellectual thing I should want to say to them is this. When you are studying any matter or considering any philosophy, ask yourself only what are the facts and what is the truth that the facts bear out. Never let yourself be diverted either by what you would wish to believe or by what you think would have beneficent social effects if it were believed. But look only and solely at what are the facts. That is the intellectual thing that I should wish to say. The moral thing I should wish to say to them is very simple. I should say, love is wise, hatred is foolish. In this world, which is getting more and more closely interconnected, we have to learn to tolerate each other. We have to learn to put up with the fact that some people say things that we don't like. We can only live together in that way. And if we are to live together and not die together, we must learn a kind of charity and a kind of tolerance, which is absolutely vital to the continuation of human life on this planet.
Scientific societies are as yet in their infancy. It is to be expected that advances in physiology and psychology will give governments much more control over individual mentality than they now have, even in totalitarian countries. Fitch laid it down that education should aim at destroying free will so that, after pupils have left school, they shall become incapable throughout the rest of their lives of thinking or acting otherwise than as their schoolmasters would have wished. Diet, injections, and injunctions will combine from a very early age to produce the sort of character and the sort of beliefs that the authorities consider desirable, and any serious criticism of the powers that be will become psychologically impossible. Bertrand Russell, 1953. France is now moving one step closer to legalizing euthanasia, where everything sounds nice about it. People that are suffering should be assisted to end their life. It is again, it looks to be positive, but this is already happening without the people knowing it. People are advised by their physicians that their loved ones are, at the end stage of their lives, and they are euthanized when they could have been, in many cases, saved. But they were old and they're not really contributing, so they're not just they are. This does happen. Happened to my own father, where they caused him to be into a state where they needed to say that it's the end of his life by ignoring a simple, small, little bed sore. And then nobody would help. No lawyer would take a case because he was 92 years old, even though that little tiny sore became the size of a football. And they said it's time for him to go. He can't live any longer. And unfortunately, I was not really awake. And I agreed with that. And many people do. But that brought me on my journey. That was one of the things that launched my journey into the truth and fighting against the medical mafia, euthanasia, eugenics, population reduction. That's what this is about. So it's pretty horrible, if somebody wants to take their own life, they can take their own life. But having somebody else murder them, it goes totally against the principles of being a doctor. But again, they want to change this. They don't want you to have any concern with morality. The doctors don't have to take a Hippocratic oath any longer. It's not required. They do not have to sustain life at all costs and work for life. They can now invoke death. If that's not a radical change since the last 100 years, I don't know what else is, but all of these things are moving so quickly into this new world order. And it's terrifying that this is going on. And this is, of course, in France. Now we have Obamacare with, again, and Bill Gates saying it's better to have teachers than old people and paying for old people. There's a real powerful group of highly intellectual people that feel this way and are, yes, people must be able to take their own lives without being assisted. People must be able to, not produce so many children. People must, be able to live a certain way. And if they don't, they're, not, it's just unbelievable. I have to cut that a little bit. So moving along, Obamacare, again, with these death panels, and euthanasia now, it's coming. It's all coming, and it's scary because I could feel it coming, I could see it coming, and watch it happen as it's happening right now.
We have a lot of huge problems. We have the nuclear problem in Korea. We have the nuclear problem in Iran. We have, of course, the whole array of problems, each of which Afghanistan. But then we have the financial issues. But they really are issues of the construction of a new world order. That's what this is about.
In earlier times, it was easier to control 1 million people than physically to kill 1 million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people and to control